Banking is a kind of the heart of the economy. Moldova is really small, but truly open economy. So whatever we do, we need to keep in mind that we are here for the customer and we need to understand the customer. All this basic transaction stuff, they will become even more invisible. Innovate fast, scale up thoughtfully.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 10th episode and in fact a new season of Banking on Success, the podcast in which senior leaders share their insights about leadership, transformation and the future of banking across CEE and beyond. My name is Elica Kavrakova, I'm Head of Institutional Clients of RBI, and I have first time with me today a new co-host.
Yeah, my name is Gunter Deuber. I'm Chief Economist, Head of Research at Raiffeisen Bank International, and we are closely following the region and the banking sector. So happy to discuss jointly with you, Elica.
Thank you, Gunter, for joining. And both Gunter and me are extremely happy to have Macar Stoianov with us today as our first guest for the year. Macar is Vice President for Finance, i.e. CFO of MAIB, the largest commercial bank in the country.
Yeah, thank you. And good afternoon. Really happy to be here, and it's really a pleasure and honor to open a new season.
Before we start with our conversation, I would like to shortly introduce MAIB and Macar to you, our audience. As mentioned, MAIB is the largest commercial bank in the country with a nationwide footprint and having more than 1/3 of market share. MAIB is pivotal in financing households, SMEs and large corporates, and thus supporting the economic development of Moldova and the path of the country into EU integration. In fact, I've been working with MAIB and following its development since many years now, and I'm amazed about the tremendous digital transformation which the bank has undergone in the last years. Macar joined the bank in February 2022, which in fact coincided with the outbreak of the Ukrainian war, i.e. Macar, you guided in your current role the bank through very tense geopolitical developments. Macar is CFA charter holder, and before MAIB, he worked for KBC, ING and McKinsey. And this already leads me to my first question. What, Macar, back then actually attracted you to start in banking, and how the banking landscape in Moldova shaped your leadership style?
Indeed. So I joined MAIB at the very beginning of 2022. When I decided to join MAIB, the situation was a bit different. So literally in a couple of days, it has changed dramatically. But one thing which I learned as a leadership, once you take a decision, you have to be bold. You have to follow it up through whatever happens and live up to the new role which you take. So I think that's important because things are changing dramatically very quickly. Now, why banking and why MAIB and why Moldova? I think it's quite a complex question. So why bank and finance in general? So I think I decided to go to the banking and financial industry because the couple of things which I liked already 25 years back. I like numbers. I like understanding the things, how things work. And I liked having impact. So I found the banking is one of the industries where you can combine these things. You should understand how the economy works, how flow funds works, how money flows through the economy. You can have impact if you develop a small financial product. If you develop a new service, with a small decision can make a huge impact on everybody's life and on the economy as such. And that's what I liked a lot about it. Now, as you already mentioned, last 7 years before joining MAIB, I have spent in the senior strategy consulting, which I loved a lot. I mean, you have a lot of exposures, you see a lot of challenges, you nail down your skills like problem solving, structuring. It's really cool. But I was opened to something new, to leap in my leadership, to have end-to-end responsibility, to develop something end-to-end, to have impact on the organization, on the team, on the people. So not being for 3, 6 or 1 year, but be long-term impact. And I was open to that. And when I came back home in January 2022, I think all the stars came together and were aligned. So I found this opportunity to join by far the biggest bank in the country, with a market share over 30, and meanwhile it became 35+%, whatever, we'll go in a bit more detail, to be in the shaping role, to have end-to-end ownership, and to being able to also to give back something to my home country, which also matters a lot, because I was abroad for more than 20 years. So it's really like a generation. 22 years abroad, it's many years. You grown up outside. I spent my years in Central and Eastern Europe, wherever. But being back home, that makes a difference. You can bring something back to society which you grew up.
But may I ask, you have this rich international experience, so what values do you believe are essential when leading the largest bank in a small, open, emerging economy like Moldova? This is a very unique place, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think so. Values for me and for us and for MAIB are really critical, because that's what transcends and what stands for longer term. There are a couple of them. One of them is kind of the openness, transparency. So being really transparent about things, speaking up. For instance, we took out in MAIB this hierarchical structure where really we're common. Anyone can come to me or to anyone and kind of speak up about issues or ideas he or she has. So it's really like openness and transparency. That's really important. Another one is about the team and team spirit, because even the smaller economies, we'll talk about the biggest or small, doesn't matter, but you're not alone. It's all about the team. It's all about how you coagulate, how you bring people together with the same scope, purpose, how you bring everyone in the same on the same boat, let's say. So the kind of the team spirit. Then it's about agility and innovation. Again, we have to leap. We are a small country, emerging economy with a huge potential. We'll talk about that as well, but it's a huge potential, like literally huge. The delta which we bring and we can bring further is enormous. I think it's quite unique in this part of Europe, at least. So innovation and agility, trying things, learning from failures, scaling up on the successes are super important. So agility and innovation, I think, another value which brings, kind of comes to my mind when talk about the values critical for this country.
If I may pick up on what you said and Gunther's question, how would you describe, because this is a new culture which the team established, the management team established in the bank. How would you describe this new corporate culture in a kind of in short few words or short sentences, and how easy or cumbersome was to undergo with the employees this transformation?
So I would define it very easily: customer in the middle. So whatever we do, we need to keep in mind that we are here for the customer, and we need to understand the customer. We know who he or she, what are the needs, unmet needs. And then it's a combination of the agility, innovation, the team, and can-do attitude, kind of empowerment, result-oriented. So these are the kind of the backbones of what we grow, what we do at MAIB. Now, as I mentioned a bit earlier as well, the team is critical. So you need to bring along the people. And it takes time. I think that's one of the key learnings which I had, some things take time.
And this is what I was heading with my question, because curious to understand how long it took you to bring all the people on board.
I think we made breakthrough, 1-2 years after we have started, but still it's a journey. So it's not a goal in itself. It's a journey which you are going through with your team and with the organization. And it's really, it's kind of a couple of things which you need to ensure. One is having this clearly defined purpose, so everyone understands why he or she is here. So really kind of aligned why we exist as organization, as a team, as a company. Then it's translating it into a specific values and specific behaviors which we expect from everyone day by day. By the way, it's not something which stands on the wall and you read once in a while and say, okay, that's my value. But it's really, you define the values, and we have 7 of them, and we try to elaborate to define what does it mean as behavior. What does it mean a team spirit as behavior? For instance, what does it mean agility as a values, and how we what do we mean by agility, or the result orientation? So there are a couple of values which we define. And then when you communicate those values, when you try to persuade people to follow you, you need to live up to your words. And that's super critical. You cannot say that, look, I'm transparent, and at the same time, if someone wants to come to you, he or she needs to book a meeting a week in advance, for instance.
So no praying water and drinking wine. Huh?
Exactly. So I think that's important, because people look at you much more carefully, much more critically, because that's what they expect from you. Live up to your word. These are the things which I've been doing personally, and we as an organization with colleagues have been doing to bring everyone together on the journey. And again, it's a journey. I wouldn't say that we are there already. It's a journey which we are going through.
Maybe before giving the floor to Gunther, one maybe related question, because Moldova is usually cited as one of the many countries in the region where we have the so-called brain drain towards Western Europe. Now, in how far this transformation journey helped you retaining talents and getting new talents from the market?
Yeah, I think you touched a very important topic which we have been facing. So indeed, Moldova has around 2.4 millions as a population, but important to highlight, somewhere between 1.4 million of Moldavians are living abroad, diaspora. So there is a kind of, if you look on the pure the territory of Republic, it's 2.4. But if you look broader, it's more than 3 million. So I think there is a bigger size than when we can look. Now, I personally found as well, for me, it was interesting that even Moldova can make impact. Me personally, like when you come to Moldova, it's okay, it's a small country, relatively small market, emerging, very new. So what should I do, or what could I do there? But you could do a lot. And the delta which you can bring and the impact which you can bring, it's kind of outstanding. It's wow. Now, I think what is important for those people to come back or to stay, there are a couple of things. One is to give a perspective, because these are young people or people who need some outlook. So what are they going to do in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? And if you give them perspective, what it could look like, this already gives them some hope and some trust that that's a place where they could stay and build up their future. The second one, I would say, is to give them examples, practical guidelines that they can do it back home. You don't need to go anywhere, but you really, whatever you want to do, you can build at home. You don't need to go far away. So you have a perspective, you have outlook, you have a trust that the future looks good. Now, it depends on you, and you can do it. And then it's kind of, you're not alone. You have many more people who, like you, have been abroad or are abroad or were thinking maybe to move abroad. But in fact, they're here or they came back, and you can do something together. So you're not alone in this journey. So for me, it's important to create that environment where people want to stay in the country, want to come to MAIB, for instance, and myself as example, but not only. We have quite some colleagues who came back for MAIB or in Moldova, and build up, I wouldn't say from the scratch, but build something exceptional with our own hands.
So it's the sense of community and purpose.
Yes. So yes, exactly. I think community, purpose, and the reasoning. Why? The first question is why. Then it's kind of what, how, but why is important? Why I should stay? Why I should build something? Why should I do something? Why is important?
And I think it's a good keyword to switch gears, maybe to look on the market, Gunther.
Definitely, because perspectives, let me say, in an organization like MAIB also linked to the perspective of the whole economy or the country and the banking sector. I think Moldova underperformed a little bit some of the other EU candidate countries in recent years. What's your take on the outlook now, as a lot of stabilization had been achieved? Yeah, and what role the EU accession process might play for you as a banking sector in this journey?
Yeah, Moldova is really small, but truly open economy. So whatever we consume, or most of what we consume, and most of what we produce, or import or export. So it's a really open economy. A lot of Moldavians were living or having some exposure to the external world. So it's really open economy. Indeed, it's being under performing, let's say, last years, 10 years. So I think we lost quite some years some time ago in our development evolution. But now it's once in a lifetime opportunity, which we have as a country, to make that leap. And I don't talk about kind of slow evolution, but really leap. Well thought through, structured, guided leap ahead. Now, we see that there's all ingredients around. Again, as we talk about the person, we need to create a perspective, because you need to have a long-term view. I mean, as in a strategy, what makes a difference if you have a clear goal, objective, a vision of success, North Star. For the country, it's the same, more or less, because you need to kind of to align millions of people, tens of millions of people to go somewhere. And that for us is this EU journey, EU path. And again, journey is as important or even more important than the goal itself. Because if you look on the countries around, which joined EU a couple of years or 10 years back, the development before joining was even more important or even more exceptional than when joining, because you have this kind of the goal. So we have this North Star, which aligned everyone, stakeholders, society, authorities, people, and so on, NGOs, you name it. That's one. The second one, I think we experience, so we have already quite some good successes, and that's important. So it's a small country, small economy, but really great successes. Let me give you one example. When foreign investors start looking really well on the country. A couple of months back, one of the leading wine producers, Purcari, was bought by the Polish conglomerate. So it's also the sign of trust. So you can build international company in the country. There are more and more people who are coming back and having opportunity to contribute, to have a career, to develop themselves, to develop organization they are working, and contribute to the society in the country. We have support from international players, from EU, from companies like yours, which help us to understand and to get know-how from outside, to build some new products, new services. And for banking sector, it's quite unique. I mean, come on, where else you can see the growth of loan book over 30% years in a row? Where else you can see the loan to GDP penetration as one of the indicators of the banking sector development, growing from 21, 22% a couple of years back to over 26%, 27% currently. Where else? So that's really kind of the speed and agility with which country is being developed. I think is quite exceptional. Of course, there are many challenges, and we still have a lot of things to do, many things, but the first signs are there. And outlook is positive, so it's just kind of, let's do it.
May I just ask, because you have a huge international experience, are you looking around a little bit, countries in the neighborhood, banking sectors in the neighborhood that are giving you maybe some good examples or ideas that made the leap forward? I think the Baltics at some point made a very big leap forward. Are you looking around also to get some inspiration for your journey as a banking group?
We continue looking around. So, I mean, the best practices, the examples all around, starting from Asia, Western Hemisphere. So yes, we are looking around. Practically, what does it mean for us? We structurally, periodically visit all the international conferences on the tech, on AI, on banking. Here in Austria, we're coming each and every year. So just to get inspired, to see what others are doing, and when coming back home to implement this, to do this. Because that's important to stay tuned, to see what's going around. I wouldn't highlight one specific country or the region or the company, which kind of the golden star for us. It's a combination of many things. I think from Baltics, what we have learned, and we learned, and you have mentioned, even the small countries can make a huge impact globally. I wouldn't say like locally, but really globally. Look at Estonia, which is like had a really leap ahead on the technology landscape and had a big startups, which became unicorn at some point of time. If you look on the more developed market, still like Poland, which is a huge another success, like capital markets, I think it's one of the, if not the biggest in the region. So there are many examples which we are being inspired by and we are looking at. And again, there is no one size fits all. That's important. When you go back home, you cannot say that, oh, at least I don't say that, look, that's what these guys did, let's do the same. No, this is what they did. Let's understand what worked, what did not work, let's understand our context and try to implement something tangible in our context. And that's important, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just a final question on the banking sector outlook or development. To what extent you think that some international banks might be interested or entering the market, as some foreign banks are catering the region, I think, very prominently? Or to what extent you are looking at least, for instance, digital only expanding a little bit in the region, given also the diaspora you mentioned?
Yeah. So I think, let me start with the second one. Definitely when we reached important market share, for instance, we have 35% market share on assets, 38% of the loan. So if you look on the most of the metrics, we are between 35 and 40%. So kind of now we grow with the market, we're shaping the market and so on. We put our questions, what's the next? We have some strategic choices internally, but also we started thinking about what's beyond Moldova. And again, coming back to what we can learn from the smaller countries. You mentioned Baltics. Another example is countries like Georgia, which also had a strong financial groups which looked outside. We decided to go to Romania with asset-like, digital-only financial institution. We applied for MBFI, non-bank financial institution license, to be able to give a loans. Kind of it's an asset-light, lean, 100% digital balance sheet business, indeed, but to be able to leverage our competences, which we think are quite good or unique, like the digital data. We work a lot on AI, which is one of our strategic choices internally, but not only, and start servicing underserved some specific segments or sub-segments in Romanian market. So that's kind of going beyond Moldova, because you have some competence capabilities which you can leverage going outside. And that's also a challenge and mental challenge for us, for our team and for our organization. Now, looking if some other players look at Moldova, I hope so and I think so. And what I know from what I hear around, indeed, companies are looking at the Moldova as a country, as a place to invest, as a place to be now, not in 10 years, not in 5 years. And I hope they will come sooner than later, including in the banking sector. Because again, if you give a perspective, so our GDP per capita is around 7K. Romania is like 2-3 times more. If you look on the Western Europe, Austria, it's even more. So for sure, Moldova will move closer to the EU average than the other way around. So it's better to be in the market, which is just at the beginning or in kind of the very first phase of this journey, of this leap, than be much later. So giving the example which I've just mentioned with the wine player, giving the context which we are facing, I think so, yes. And I'm sure that there are players who are looking carefully on the Moldovan sector, Moldovan economy.
And before, I was just thinking while you were speaking, I would have a question on digital as well, but maybe let me shortly stay on the forward path. What would you say, or how would you describe like the key elements of MAIB strategy for the next 3 to 5 years, and in which of the segments like retail or SME or large corps, where do you see the biggest growth potential?
Yeah, quite complex question. Let me try to break it. So I will start the second part. Currently, and we believe there is opportunities in all of them. We're serving kind of all the segments. retail, micro and SME, which we call business banking, and corporate. If you look on the so the size of the growth and the type of the growth will be a bit different, but still significant across all the segments. Retail, from one side, there is a catch-up which people need to have with the quality of life. They need more apartments, better TV sets, fridges, you name it. So the loan book will grow, the penetration will grow because people need to upskill their quality of life. That's clear. And we expect there is continuous growth in the coming 3 to 5 years. Maybe slightly lower than the last 2 years, which was 30-40%, but still double-digit growth. From another side, if you talk about retail, and you highlight this, we are facing this more aging population. And what people do need when they become older, they need a bit more savings, more investment to be ready for the retirement. So also, I expect quite some upward trend in the liability side of the business, because when you're 40, 50, you start thinking about what I'm going to do when I'm 60, 70, and maybe some insurance, some health insurance. I need some savings to put aside to live a good quality of life later on as well. So that part also is expected to grow significantly because people will prepare, to have a same or better quality of life later on. Let me now jump on corporate. Corporates, I think what we experience, it will be more targeted investment opportunities to really, from one side, to become much more efficient as a company, because our economy is facing more and more this Western kind of the markets, which is big. I will come in a second, which was big, competitive, and need to be really kind of top-notch performance to be able to compete with the companies from the whole EU. So there will be targeted investment-driven growth in this corporate world, like energy efficiency, infrastructure, you name it. The deeper level of value-adding activities and so on. SME and micro, that's a place where probably we'll see the highest potential, because that's a sector which is really kind of, it start being developed, it's being professionalized. So it's a sector which has the biggest impact on the ground, creates a kind of place of work and so on. So SME and BB, I think it will be, if not the biggest, but at least one of the biggest areas of growth, given what I just mentioned. Now, coming to the first part of the question, this perspective EU. So integration and the journey towards EU, it's really like, it's something which shapes not only economic development, but also society, the governance, the set of values which we are kind of living in. So it's really transformational change. I would not underestimate the impact which it brings along. Now, access to the EU or the journey has a couple of important ingredients which brings to Moldova. On top of that, it's a golden star, which everyone goes towards. It's access to the huge market. It's 450 million people. It's a huge market. So you're really a small country, and you are not selling anymore to 2 or 3 million people. You have a market like ocean. So it's opportunity to scale up very quickly, whatever idea you have. It doesn't matter. You have a wine, financial product, you have digital services. It doesn't matter. Your customer base now is over 400 millions. I'm not talking about the corporates and all the stuff around. The second one is you have access to the know-how, to the expertise, to partners like you, for instance, which can help to define the trade finance products. And when you export, you don't need to take a loan anymore. You just make a trade finance, which a bit cheaper, more efficient, and so on, has a bit of different cut as a product. So you have this toolkit in front of you, which you can leverage. And toolkit of know-how, financial products, infrastructural products, IT. So that's kind of the toolkit. You can use it. And that what is coagulate people together, an organization.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anything to add from your side? Other than that, I would jump on the digital, because you've mentioned, you had the digital transformation, and we spoke about that. It's more of a eventually more theoretical question, but how do you think the traditional banks will be in 10 years from now? How much a traditional bank can go into direction to be a platform, or would a traditional bank would transform, or it needs to transform more to an advisory house? So what's your view on that, on the future of traditional banking?
That's a question of a million. It's very, very dangerous to predict the future. So. But let me try to give a bit of perspective. How do I feel? How do we see it? So banking is a kind of the heart of the economy as such. So I think it will stay as a banking. Now, what does it mean behind? You need transfer of funds, whatever it means. You will need some loans. You need to save somewhere. So the kind of the concept is here to stay. The question is not necessarily what, but more about how. What we experience and what we foresee that we are now already going through the fundamental transformation with AI, Gen AI, large language model, data. We can talk more about that, of course. But that's really transformational. I would put it like it's as big as what have happened with the web, with the internet, like 25 years ago. It's really changed the way we do the business, the way we live, the way we interact, and so on. So if we talk about the banking, all this basic transactional stuff, they will become even more invisible. Payments, basic loans, classical deposits, savings, you name it. They will become less and less visible. And by the way, we also don't want to spend too much time when we use BNPL to buy, iPad. So again, it's invisible. It becomes part of, it's so well embedded in your daily life that you even don't feel it. It's like energy. You don't feel it, but it exists. And without this, you cannot live. So that, I think, will become less and less visible. Very light human touch, if any, let's say in 5 to 10 years from now. But what will stay, this human part. And if before, let's say, digital was strategic differentiator, now it's a basics. So let's say 10, 15 years ago, when I started my career, 20 years ago, digital was like a real differentiator. Like I remember 2005, 2007, like if you had the web bank or something, you were really differentiated. Now it's not differentiator anymore. But what is differentiator now and will become more in the future, this human touch. And clients, I talk about retail persons or the corporate, doesn't matter who, will come to the banks or the organizations like a bank for advisory, for partnership, for growth, for transformation, for really like someone to rely on, to leverage different set of competencies to change, to transform, to build something new or something different. So I foresee the banking 10 years from now, so 2036, long time, but probably when we meet, hopefully at that time, it will be like so quickly passed by.
This is a good idea. Let's meet in 10 years from now again.
10 years from now, exactly. Time flies quickly. So it will be a bank where all the transactional, all the basic services will be without human intervention, will be so well embedded into our organization, our way of living, that we don't even feel it. Like we don't how did you pay your bill? How did you pay your, purchase? People say, okay, I don't know. It just happened. But it will be something where human touch will be important, and human touch not in sense of like making payments, but in sense of, I have this question, be it in life, for instance, how to prepare for the transfer of wealth to the next generation, be it in corporate, okay, I want to expand, or the other way around, restructure my organization, help me how to structure it, or help me to optimize my capital structure, or help me to get the best approach to go and raise new funds because I have great ideas. I'm SME or business banking or maybe new startup. And that's where the banking or kind of the financial advisory banking will be very, very, very important. So, and all this will be connected by a couple of things. AI, based on AI is data. Data is new gold. There's no new oil. And all infrastructure around, IP, open banking, open finance, which is upcoming, and so on.
But maybe also interesting to follow up because to remain a reliable partner, I think security and cybersecurity is key. So how do you balance your rapid innovation with risk management and cybersecurity? And you're living in a very specific region of the world. There might be also certain actors challenging the banks, or players on the cybersecurity side. And I'm speaking not just of private actors, but possibly also of state-sponsored actors.
Yeah. So these things go hand in hand. So you should be it's not all innovation and the agility or only security. It's two things together. The way we approach at MAIB very carefully, first of all, we're open to innovation and we say, okay, let's try new things. But when you try new things, you start with a small pilot, which is limited scope, specific time frame, and specific vision of success. So what do you want to test? And by the way, quite some ideas also not going through, it's not fail, it's like more a learning opportunity. But you start small, you grow fast, whatever it works, or you learn. For us, it's important that whenever a new idea comes, a new product, a new service, you name it, we test it in the specific limited scope, time frame, so we can see what works and what does not work, or what works best or better, or not so good, not so well. So we can learn from that. While doing so, having cybersecurity risks expert on the table. So it's not coming, okay, we did this idea, we tested, it seems to work here very well, here we need to improve, and now let's look on the cybersecurity. No, they're part of the team. And by the way, when we set up our agile team and agile transformation, which MAIB went through, and it's really like true agile organization now, these risk experts are also part of the team day by day. So really they have a voice, they contribute, they work from day one. And once we see what works best, what should be changed or improved, we scale it up, but in very well thought through, tested, phased approach, but quickly. And of course, what's important to collaborate closely with the authorities, because also to explain what we want to do, what are the risks which we see, how we cover them, how we develop a new product or service, a new platform, to having them part of the journey. So it's not one or another. And by the way, also these bad guys don't sleep. They also evolve and they use AI, data, you name it. So it's just being very thoughtful around what's your idea, how you're going to test it in a very limited environment, to learn from this and scale it up as soon as you believe that there is some value behind.
I'm switching gears to the topic of ESG. I believe that, or let's turn the question other way around. Is, in your view, ESG still the topic of ESG still a strategic differentiator? This is the first part of the question. And the second part is how it is embedded in the bank strategy currently.
ESG is something, for me personally, and also for us as MAIB, is something which is important to focus on from point of view of sustainability. Because whatever we do, we don't do it for one day, for 1 year, for 10 years. We do it for ages, forever. And that's a kind of overarching vision. Sustainability comes from governance. You should have a right governance. And by the way, one of the things, very strong things which EU journey brings us is this governance, clear rule of law, clear rule of games, so you can be sure what you're doing today, what your rights are protected, and so on. So that's important. The governance for the bank, for us, is really important. Governance, how we take decisions based on with inputs, how we make trade-offs. Which trade-offs do we make? How we balance pros and cons. Social. You just mentioned, it's a small country. It's like everyone knows everyone. It's a really small economy. Without growing, economy cannot grow without people. And the social part, it's really kind of cornerstone of who you are. So kind of education, involving people, the important from sustainability point of view. Environment. I think Moldova is one of the countries which suffers a lot from this crisis, droughts and stuff like that. So really a lot. So we have quite volatile last year's agro production. Sometimes it's quite good. 2-3 years in a row it was so. And if we do not incorporate environment part in the way we give a loan, the way we support our partners, our clients, corporate, business banking, it's very difficult to make sustainable. Okay, you give a loan, but if he or she does not invest in the infrastructure, in more productive agriculture, for instance, okay, you know that you'll have some issues in a couple of years. So for us, is something which we focus on because we want to ensure that whatever we do is sustainable. We have clear governance which helps us to be clear which decisions are taken, how they're taken, it's fair, correct, transparent. So society is backbone of the economy, of who we are. Environment, it's something which impacts us significantly, and we need to have it in mind when we take specific decisions. Classic example, loan decision.
I think you're heavily active in sectors like agriculture or energy, yeah? So you are supporting your clients along the journey.
Yeah, we do. And now we're also in discussion with some important project to invest in the wind. Yes, we working closely with some clients to invest in the energy sector, green energy, photovoltaics, windmills, to help to become even more independent from energy point of view. By the way, I think 2022, 23, I don't remember, I just came. We had this conference on green energy or around energy. And at that time, I was one of the speakers and prepared some research. And I was astonished that Moldova is one of the countries with the highest opportunity for the green energy, because a lot of sun land, you can really leverage what you have. I mean, sun is given somehow. And agriculture, yes, because look, our economy still depends a lot on agriculture, depending on the year, of course, but between 7 and above of GDP is agro sector. And it's important part of our customer base. Not only, but that's important.
You touched a little bit already the outlook topic, or let me say the future. So what gives you confidence about the first, maybe Moldova's economic future, despite all the uncertainties on a regional and global level? And maybe also what gives you confidence about the economic future of EU? Because not just Moldova is challenged by a lot of regional uncertainties.
But also Europe.
I think also Europe as a whole is currently challenged. And you seem to be determined to join the Euro bloc.
So I'm quite positive about Moldova for a couple of reasons. So as I mentioned, indeed, it has a golden star, and which aligned all the stakeholders, all the players in the country and outside on the same direction. And that's important. That's really important. It's really open, dynamic society. So it's society which is changing rapidly. You can really have impact not in 10 years, not in 5 years, but I'm not joking, literally in a couple of months. And that's quite unique. And that's, by the way, there are a lot of, that's one of the advantages of being a smaller economy. Small steps can have a huge impact. You are agile, you are nimble, you can change quickly, you can react quickly, you can learn, you can implement things in a nimble way. So that allows me to believe that Moldova is nimble enough, open enough, flexible enough to be able to adjust on different currents and use them for its purpose, for its own benefits. We have a huge diaspora outside, which I strongly believe step by step will look more and more in Moldova. Some time ago, I read, I think a World Bank or something made research. So it's very interesting. So they look on all the countries and evolution of the way people go back or forth. And they found that if countries very poor, usually people do not have a tendency to go out because they don't have enough means. If somewhere between, people heavily move away because better opportunity somewhere else. But at some point of time, there's a point where people start coming back because realize, I can also live well back at my home country. I can also contribute and make impact there, even much quicker than if I would be somewhere else. We're not there yet, but I think we're coming close and close to that point where people, Moldavians, will start thinking, look, if I want to live well, have a nice car, go for holidays, have my family nearby, my kids, my parents, I don't need to be thousands or hundreds of kilometers far away. I can be back home. So I think that's also upcoming. And that's also a huge potential of the country. Again, over 1 million people living abroad. It's like a huge, it's 1/3, I would say, or close to it. That kind of gives me feeling and trust and belief that the future is strong and good in Moldova. That's a place to be. And again, Delta matters, the impact. Now about EU. So I think from economic point of view, EU is a huge market. Again, it's 450 millions. Yes, we are different countries, different cultures, but by the way, that's also can be advantage because also in the strategy, as we know, like when you have a team of the same people, of the same culture, way of thinking and so on, the outcome is not as strong, as good, as if you had people with different backgrounds. Sometimes ago, not long ago, I was reading an article about leveraging AI, agentic AI. So in banking, somewhere in Europe, they for underwriting, they replace, I don't know, let's say 10 people with AI. And I put a manager of AI to guide and give feedback to this algorithm to make a decision. And what they found out, that the quality of decision time went down. Why? Because AI was just learning from that one person, and what person is by design is biased. I mean, I'm biased as well. I mean, we have some own biases. So you just scale up that person 10, hundreds times. While if you have a couple of people on the same table, you have different views and you have debates and you take better decision. So the same is here. That's also advantage of Europe. We are different, and in difference, as long as we make it thoughtful how we navigate that difference, it's something which is very, very, very powerful. Now, I think where you should focus at the same time Moldova, by the way, it's how to integrate further our markets. Because the power comes from unity and having one market, let's say one capital market, one banking market. So if I want to get access to the capital, I don't need to go to 10 markets, but I can go to one unified market. So even further integrating further this kind of the financial sector, capital markets, it could or should make a big difference. Because look, how many startups we have in Europe? I think many. But many of them, for raising funds, go to somewhere else, let's say 2 years, because there are deeper capital markets. If they want to scale up, they go there because you have smaller market, by the way, 350 million or something around. So Europe is bigger. But in Europe, you have many regulators. They have, let's say, one, okay, there is a different state, but okay. So how to make it easier for bright ideas to be tested here and grow very quickly, scale it up on such a huge market. So we can really become a hub of the kind of the big corporations. I think there are things we need to do as Europe a lot. We need to be more aligned. Europe is very strong and waking up when there is a crisis. And I think that's quite human, by the way. When the life is good, you relax, you take longer coffee breaks and so on. But when you have challenges, you are much more prone, you're much more kind of... you are listening to yourself, you see you're in the change mode, you're in the improvement mode. So I think that's where Europe is started going through last, I would say, years, for sure, after 2022, it's woken up and it's in the journey, find the way how to become even stronger.
I love this infectious optimism about EU, which, pity enough, we don't feel here within the EU, but this is also the advantage, I think, Gunta, maybe correct me or not, about the CE economies, where we have this much more dynamic
And there are some tangible examples, as was also mentioned. Yeah, for instance, the Baltics developed greatly within the European Union. Yeah. We have seen a lot of other countries, so the benefits are sometimes still more tangible there than for some of the Western Europeans.
No. But I think, look, I also was living in Europe quite a long time. I spent in Belgium many years, and not only. So there should be a wake-up call. I think what we face, we reach the level of the wealthness quite astonishingly. If you look on the GDP per capita, level of wealth, quality of life, Europe is, if not the best, but one of the best, especially some parts of the Europe. The quality of life really astonishing. Now, there are many countries across the globe which are catching up. We need to start being more open to those changes and to be more, I would say to you, more open to integrate the changes, to change status quo. And I see it a lot. I see it a lot, for instance, in our case, like look on MAIB. So we changed a lot the rule of the games. We changed a lot the dynamics in the market. With innovation, we say, okay, the digital is the core. Because digital, I mean, you don't want to spend time going to the branch and putting money on the deposits or taking loans. You want to have everything online. So you have to innovate. You have to be always relevant. And I have this view that in order to stay relevant and appealing to the customer, whoever is customer, corporate, retail, SME, you need to innovate, continuously innovate. And then to scale it up and capture the value, you need a size. And Europe has a size. It really has a size. Now it's how to make this bridge between innovation and the scale up. Idea, test it, and then scale it up. And that's what we do at MAIB. So let's say AI, let's say digital. The speed of change is so quick that once you innovate, the first, let's say, months, year, maybe a couple of years, you have this advantage which allows you to capture the value, to sell more, to penetrate the market share, to have more satisfied customers. But then it's very quickly eaten up by competitors. So you cannot sit on your successes for very long. You always have to be one step ahead, 1, 2, 3 steps ahead. But then you have to be very mindful once you innovate, how you leverage it in this time frame, which you have before it's eaten up by competitors, and then continues to innovate. So innovate fast, scale up thoughtfully, so you can, from one side, stay relevant for the customers, from another side, stay relevant, capture the value. Again, I make this analogy. It can be about the person. So I learned something. Okay, I learned something 20 years ago, but if I would not continue my personal development, probably I would not be relevant in the labor market today. So I need to learn continuously from now on. But then I need to implement, to do something and say, okay, not only learn, but I can do it. I have a specific competence. The same for organization. Let's say MAIB, we developed some new product and features. BNPL, we developed digital loans, for instance, over 82%, I think, of deposits for retail as a number done online, fully online. People sitting back home or working and making deposits. And close to 79% of loans, consumer loans, are given online. So you don't need to go to the branch. You take a loan right now and you go and buy something, whatever you want. So, but then you need to scale up. And that's kind of the market share counts. The customer base counts. So Europe is the same as a country. How to make that bridge? Because Europe has, as I mentioned, it has a lot of capital. Look how much capital we have. We have capital, we have customers, we have people with ideas. We just need to connect all this all together. And I agree with you, there is maybe some concerns about the Europe, but my only call is think big. And the same I say to Moldavians, think big, be brave, and take thoughtful, well-structured decision to scale it up quickly.
It's a very good finish of our talk, and I was just thinking that the European discussion would be a perfect topic for another podcast, for another talk. Maybe at the very end, a question which goes a bit more personally: what helps you recharge, and what motivates you every day?
I think I will connect it with this a bit of also personal values, because I'm a strong believer in the values, be it personal, be it organization, be it a country and society. So this idea of continuous development and growth. What gives me energy is when you feel that today you are better, you are more impactful, you are more valuable for people around than yesterday. And you have a perspective that tomorrow you'll be even more valuable, more impactful than today. I think that's kind of, I call it perspective. So where you've been X time ago, where you are now, and where you want to be. That perspective gives a view, because if you're up, it doesn't mean that you'll be always up. If you're down, doesn't mean you will be always down. But having perspective, a bigger picture, like a leader, they will say, you have with one eye, you see like 10 years ahead. With another one, you see what's coming in the next 1 hour. So this kind of combination of the things. The second one, I really like, though I'm coming from the finance numbers guy, as I mentioned, that's what excited me when I was in high school, then university. But this people side, because the ability to have impact on the people, on the society, again, gives me a lot of energy. So look, literally, I see that person whom I start working with as a team member, as a colleague, as a team, couple of years back, now is in a different stage of his or her life. I think that gives. And also traveling, because by having different perspectives, talking to people from different cultures, countries, languages, that gives a different view and different perspective on who am I, what I want, and also makes me more humble towards myself and towards others, and gives more feeling of being part of the community. So kind of traveling around, seeing new cultures, new people, talking to people, I loved a lot. And I was doing it a lot.
Macar, thank you for this very, I would say, motivational and inspiring last words. Thank you for the great insights we shared with me and Gunther and our audience today. Dear listeners, thank you for tuning in the new season of Banking on Success, and looking forward to see you for our next episode in the new season. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Raiffeisen Bank International. Make it happen.